no matter what the outcome was going to be. I mean, we were speaking to lawyers. It was getting to the point that we were, okay, we're both amicably going to set this. And obviously, the children will always come first. We will always love each other. I know that without a shadow of a doubt. We didn't ever, it was just, we were growing very, very far apart. But it was, I knew my worth. I knew it eventually. I knew that I deserved to be loved. I knew that I deserved to have the best type of father for my children. And I deserved for me to be in a space where I can live in peace. And if you were not going to provide those things, even though I love you still, I am willing to walk away. I didn't necessarily say I was going to get divorced. Separation was still just on the cards. But I was at that point where I said, this is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I see for us. And if you can't be on board with that, we are not going to grow together.
So, hello and welcome to Blending and Mending. Guys, I'm over the moon. So, we've got a really special guest, Bianca Edwards. Friends, she is a mummy, she's a stepmommy, she is an entrepreneur, she's a wife. But I think for me, Bianca, what stands out for me is you're a woman, right? You are sassy as hell. I've seen you strike your stuff on Instagram videos, so you need to teach me how to strike the pose and do what I need to do.
Girl.
And you are, for me, just the epitome of absolute femininity, right? So I'm excited to have you on the call. I'm excited to just lean into your story and for you to share parts of your growth and your journey with us. So thank you so, so much for being here.
Oh, Chantal, thank you so much for having me. When I received your email, I absolutely love what you stand for. The whole mending and blending
Thank
is
you.
just so important because we live in a society today where we often are way more blended than we ever were before in history. So it's an opportunity for people to find a space they can feel comfortable, and it covers such a broad variety of topics as well. Um, so I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you.
And don't
I,
forget the sass.
Absolutely. I need to learn how to strut and the poses and the angles, right? But that's a different podcast. So
100%, definitely.
So, in terms of our
Well,
topic, right, Bianca and I met a few weeks ago and we were pulling this thing apart in terms of what do we share with you that really resonates with her, that resonates with me, that we know is going to have an impact. And what I love about the
yeah,
topic, Bianca, we're going to chat about is it's about whether you're married or not, whether you're in this relationship or not, right? But it's the expectations we hold of others to ultimately fill our cups. It is the
yeah,
expectations we have of the people around us, whether it's spoken or unspoken, and the disappointment that moves and flows in between all of that. And it's finding
yeah,
ourselves through that process to say, hold up, I'm holding up a mirror. Yes, you can do A, B, and C for me, but there's so much I can do for myself. And you articulated it so beautifully when we chatted. It was about finding your self worth, right? That just that discovery or the process of discovery.
yes,
So,
yes,
guys, that's
yes.
what we're leaning into today, and we're going to pull it apart with you. So, we're excited for you guys to be part of it. So, Bianca, just a step back. Tell us a little about you.
Yes.
What's your story? Let's take a proper deep dive.
So I am a very, very bold, opinionated woman in the sense of going through a lot of trauma growing up as a child as well as an adult. And it's funny because I think when we go through those things, ultimately we feel like they're going to break us, and for many people they do. But ultimately, if you just push past a certain breaking point in your life, you realize that you can't be broken anymore, um, and it ends up just developing a character and a sense of self value and self worth in oneself that I think is undeniably a strength that you can use or even weaponize. I know that's a strong word to use, but weaponize to pave the way of where you want to be. So, that in a nutshell is like the type of person I want to be seen as. That's the type of person that I want to be, is to use everything that has tried to cripple me into joy, love, peace, authority as well. Because, when I think of what a woman is told to be a lot of the times, this meekness and joyful and kind person. It doesn't mean that we don't have the authority to stand our ground and learn things and make mistakes and then grow from them. So I'm a model mom, known on Instagram. My job and my duty, I feel, is I work with a lot of children. I work with adults as well, but is to help develop bold, strong, opinionated children. Ultimately, take away the glitz and the glam. My name is Ace, my school is Ace Models Durbanville. Yes, it's gorgeous and fun and fresh and I'm very sassy. I
Yeah.
always say I'm sassy, classy, and a little badassy, okay? So you have to be a little badassy in this day and age, okay? Otherwise, you're going to be walked all over. So I have all of that in the characteristics, but ultimately, at the end of the day, and my sister-in-law Maureen I always laugh because when I show her videos and stuff, she's always like, "Look, it's mini Biancas. How does it feel having mini Biancas?" And I always say to her, like, "Oh no, I don't want more people like me. I've got so much work on to do on myself. I'm hoping that they'll become little thems, whatever those little thems want to be, like whatever they choose to be in their life." So strong, opinionated, and bold children is what I feel the basis of my life, my passion, my inspiration lies within. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, my life, my journey. Didn't realize I'd end up working with children ever in my wildest dreams, but God has a perfect plan for everything. He used, I think, all the weaknesses and things that I lacked as a child myself, and He kind of installed it in me so that I could give everything I didn't get. That
Sure.
somehow He helped me find in adulthood that I can now teach children to have, because I solely believe our youth is our future. And if we can have strong and independently minded children, can you imagine what they're going to feel like and act like when they're adults?
So it's this
I
full
think I would,
circle, this
yes,
moment, yeah,
100%.
full circle
So,
for you. And then you're
yeah,
married, right? You're married, you're a mommy,
yeah,
you're a stepmommy, so there's all of those
married,
other.
mommy, stepmommy. I was a mom when I was 20 years old. I was a stepmom. When I
Okay.
met my husband, I met one of his sons when I was the mere age of 20. So I got thrown into this blended life very, very easy. So that when I saw your email with blending and mending, I was like, girl, I am the epitome of blending and mending. Okay. Like it is that's my surname. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, and there's this guy, they go to Sun City and he's like,
Yes.
we're blending and mending like wine and babuti. And it's always been our like little
So
family stuff
cute.
because family comes together as a blended moment too. And if you ever have the opportunity to watch it, I can't remember the name of it. That is like I say to every blended family, you have to watch that because the dynamics of a family coming together from two different worlds,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. It really can be something so beautiful. There's hardships in all of these things, but it could really be a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is probably one of my favorites there as well, right? And they're sitting in the Lost Palace in Sun City. And I think
Yes,
from a South African perspective, you're like, oh, they're at the Valley
yes.
of the Waves.
You get it. Yeah, 100%. You're like,
Yeah, it's
I know
really
this
cool.
place. It's home for me. Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
movie. It's really cool.
So for me, right, and that's one of the things that you touched on is you met your hubby, you became a mom at 20, and I think to myself, we're still figuring out who we are at the age of 20. I mean,
Yeah,
we're still figuring it out probably at the age of 40, right? And now
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
step into a role of having to become a stepmom, trying to understand what that looks like, and you're navigating your relationship. And then I know you said, I think you've got two stepsons, and you also have children of your own.
Two children. So we've got
Okay.
four, yes, in total. So I've got Jaden, who is turning 22 this year. It's his birthday on the 25th of March. And then my oldest is 27. He's turning 27. His birthday is actually now coming up the 19th of March.
Okay.
And then I have my son, who is 7. He's in October. And then my daughter, who is 3, turning 4 in April. So we are a very blended family and very blessed because I I didn't know that that's the life that I think God would have chosen for me. You always picture the perfect life of you're going to get married and you're going to have a family together and the baggage. And that's one of the things I think my husband messaged me. He made me an email actually when we first met, explaining like, I come with this, and you're young, because my husband's 13 years older than me. So I can
Okay.
imagine for him meeting a little 20-year-old little thing, and I was Miss Sassy Pants back then, so you can imagine, right? So the sassy's toned down a little slightly as I've matured, but I was very sassy back then. So I think a lot of people thought like, Gavin, you are so much older. You have two sons, and this is a young, technically a teenager. I'm coming out from my teens into my, and a lot of people were like really doubting like if this could work. And it's so crazy because 10 years later, look at us now,
That's
10
beautiful.
years, 13 years together, 10 years married, obviously not without failures, but um, the fact that all these hurdles, like if you are ever like sitting and wondering and you're falling in love with somebody who has these, if you want to call it baggages or extra things you weren't expecting. Like I know that there's people who turn around and say, I could never be with someone who has children. That's just not what I see for myself. And there's times where I turn around and I'm like, so you could deny yourself the most beautiful life because of one thing that you're putting yourself in a box for. Like my life is so much more colorful for the fact that I have two children that didn't come out of my groins. You
Yeah.
know, um, there's been hardships with it, but ultimately, at the end of the day, when we're together, we're family.
Yeah,
That
you've
is the
worked
most
through
important thing, is
that.
that
Yeah.
there's love, there's misunderstanding, there's trying, there's failing, but it makes. I mean, my daughter who's 3 and my son who's 7 absolutely love their older brother. Like it's their hero, and they're years apart. I mean,
Yeah,
27 and
it's a
3 is a very
huge,
big age gap.
it's a huge
Huge.
age gap.
It is the most beautiful thing though. Like I get emotional when I think about it because my oldest son, is the most beautiful soul, and my children, my actual children, just adore him. And I feel like people miss out on those opportunities because they box themselves and thinking like what a life would look like with these different ages and these things that we're told we should and shouldn't do as a society. So for me, it's important to break those narratives and understanding that love, when it's God ordained, okay, not love because love because God's in the center of it, He will make it work always. Not without, trials and tribulations, but ultimately there will always be a peace in the middle of the center of that. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about being a blended stepmom. And it's funny, you said the word stepmom, and I said it to Gavin the other day. I said, "Oh, I'm a stepmom." And I know it sounds stupid, but I didn't realize until you told me that I'm a stepmom. I've never seen myself that way.
Oh,
I'm
that's
just Bianca.
beautiful.
And I was like, I actually laughed. I was like, I've just realized that I'm a stepmom. He's like, what do you mean you just realized you're a stepmom? I said, I am a stepmom. Like, your children aren't mine. I'm their stepmom. I, I was so taken back by that, the fact that that's a label.
It
And
is.
I'm not saying that you can't
Yeah.
label it, but I've never thought of myself that way. I haven't. I've always thought I am Bianca, this is Willem, this is Jaden, and I love them. And that I am a part of their life and they are part of mine.
Beautiful.
I've never thought of that in my mind until you said that. And I was like, that's something to think about. But we put those labels on. Do you understand? Like it doesn't have to be that way. You can just be who you are in that person's life without even thinking
Yeah.
about what label we call ourselves.
sh-
You know what I'm
showing up
saying?
without showing up without title. And I mean, even when you're speaking about your family now, you're not referring to your stepsons, you're referring to your
Yeah.
boys, right? Like your
Yeah,
sons.
100%.
So
I
I
always
love that.
I always say, like my oldest, my middle, my baby, my girl, obviously out of respect as well. When I do introduce them, I'll sometimes say these are my sons from another mother, like as a joke. I always say I didn't birth them, but they're my boys. Because I never know like how they feel in the sense of, do you want me to say this is my son or my stepson? But I
Yes.
once said this is my stepson, and then my stepson said to me, oh, are we going by stepson now, not son anymore? And I was like, okay, so he doesn't mind me calling him his son. So sometimes, I just want to also make sure that they feel comfortable that I would never try and replace their moms, because that is not my job. I mean, I think that was the first thing that I realized when I became quote unquote a stepmom, because it's still like a funny thing to me to think of myself as that, because I just feel like I'm just me, you know.
Yeah.
When that first kind of happened, I was like, what is my duty here? Like, how am I gonna? Who am I to them? And God spoke to me very quickly in the sense of saying, like, just be yourself. You're not their mother. You're never going to be. Don't try to be. It's not your job. I didn't call you to be. Otherwise, I would have planted that seed inside of you and I would have given them to you, but they're not. You be yourself. You can offer something completely different. And that is what a blending and mending family is. It's about understanding that we don't have to have titles, but we do have roles. And I think people need
Oh,
to understand the difference between what a
yes.
title is and what a role is. You know, label versus what your duty is. A label and a duty. My duty, first of all, is to love God with all my heart, all my soul, all my mind. And then second is to be loving to my neighbor. So for me, that's my children. They are my neighbor as well. At the end of the day, we've got to treat everybody with the same respect and love. And I think understanding that you're not a label, you have a role to play. And my job is to make sure I know my role and best in all my children's lives, including my husband's, because he's my fifth child. You know what I'm saying?
We need to get into that as a podcast,
Yeah,
right?
we
But
do.
what you're saying, though, I mean, so I've got my stepson and he's 8, and one of the things we spoke about at home is that he might not have come from my tummy, but he comes from my heart, and
Oh, I
it's
love
about that role that you've spoken about. So it's
Yeah,
not about trying to be his mom because he has his mommy, but
yeah,
absolutely wanting to give him the nurturing and the love and the care that I give my daughter, that he feels that he's part of that
yes,
too because he's part of our unit. So I get
yeah,
that, and I think so many people potentially live in the title more so than the role. So I think you've nailed something there that I've never thought
yeah.
about before. So thank you.
I love that. Oh, I think the Holy Spirit's definitely working here today. He's giving me all the nice things to say.
So I want to take you into when you and I chatted, right? We were speaking a lot about the expectations that we put on our partners and in terms of our relationships. And I
Yes,
think we're seeing that in marriages, we're seeing that in relationships, we're seeing it in blended families, normal families, for the lack of a better word, where we can lose ourselves in the process of expecting so much from the people around us versus where we're at in that space in our life. And I wrote it down, you made a comment and you said, you have been through this journey where you went through a year of you feeling that everything was being taken away. And that was your
yes.
moment of humbling. Can you talk us through that?
So in 2023, I always say, and if you watch my Instagram, anybody that watches my Instagram will know that I have a very delusional confidence about myself. And I really do think it's God ordained, because there's some times where I think, okay, girl, like you are seriously confident in certain things in your life. And I think it's just maybe the hope and joy that I have as a person, that everything will always be okay, no matter what you go through. Because I've been through the most as a young child, a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. But I really had this so many people painted this picture of what my life was going to be, that it couldn't have gone any differenter. I was painted very much the black sheep of my family, and I've had this delusional confidence of life that I have gone through so much bad things that there's nothing that can seriously take me down anymore. And I think having gone
Yes.
through that has ended up making me have this delusional confidence, in the sense of 2023, I'm starting 1st of January in 2023, going on a hike to this beautiful, like, waterfall. And it was like my way of thinking, this is God's blessing. This year is going to be amazing. And I kept,
This is it.
I had the audacity to turn around and say, 2023, the year to be free. Little did I know it was free of everything. It was going to be taken all away. Literally,
Yeah, literally.
literally,
Yeah.
literally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all the leads. And 2023 was a point where sometimes you have to be separated from life in order to heal. So I actually started therapy the year before that, the end of October 2022. So, as a Christian as well, I was always very nervous about starting therapy because of the feeling of like being judged, or that only God can help you with certain things, which is still the fundamental basis of my therapy, was always based in therapy and what the Word of God would say to back it up. And as I went into 2023, it's funny because there's these memes that you look at that says, when you start Googling the symptoms of these people, if they're gaslighting you, and then you realize it's talking about you. And that was my, I was like, he's a narcissist for sure. No, look at this. Let me Google. And then I would read it and I was like, interesting. I have a lot of those those little, and I was like, am I the problem? Now that's a very, very dark place to be in because not many people get to a self-actualization and realization that you have to do the work in you. And it is a hard place to be. I can tell you from a delusional, confident person, I was humbled very quickly and I had to make a decision in that moment. And it wasn't about anybody else. It wasn't like, because at one point I even said to my therapist, why must I do all the changing? Why must I put all this effort in and do all these things so that other people can benefit from it? Because that's that anger that was in me for a long time. I was like, I have to, I've been sober for 9 years. I don't smoke, I don't party. Everything is very clean and there's nothing wrong with anyone who does it, but that was my journey. I was like, I've given so much up. And now I must still change me to what? To make other people happy. I was like, this doesn't work for me. This doesn't make sense. And the journey that I realized that had affected my marriage so much and affected a lot of my relationships too. And I think it boiled down to me as a child, and maybe you've experienced this, other people have experienced like lack of love and trauma as a child, is that I realized that I had an expectation that people had to fill me emotionally, especially my husband. I married him when I was 22. I met him when I was 20. I thought that was his role. His job was to take care of me on every aspect. I didn't know I was allowed to do that for myself. And I know that might sound stupid to other people, but I was never taught that. I had a tough relationship with my father and then a mom who overcompensated for everything. I was beautiful and I'm this and I love you and you're my best friend and this, and then someone who wouldn't give me all of that. So the distance between the two was very confusing for me. So I had this
Okay.
understanding that I lacked emotional support from a man, so I craved it so much as a woman, thinking husband must fulfill these roles and he must do that. Until one day I realized through my therapy and through my journey, through my healing process, that I can fill my cup up almost at least 80 to 85%. I can give back to myself. I didn't know that was an option in the form of self-talking, journaling, prayer, loving myself, talking. I said to myself the one day, I was crying on the treadmill. We're losing everything. It was a bit of a tough time. And eventually I just said, I love you so much. I just said to myself, I love you so much. And I was like, wow, that feels so good. And it's crazy because it's something so small, but it was such a real moment for me to really accept the the really hard place that I was in. I completely just loved myself in the darkest moment of my life. And that type of love is what God asks us to have when we love thy neighbor as we love thyself. Because us women, we want to give, 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 give. But have you ever truly accepted who you are? Bad, ugly, beautiful. And that for me was the game changer in restoring my marriage, restoring my relationship with people, restoring my relationship first and foremost with myself and God, was taking back the fact that it was no one's responsibility for my emotional
But
needs
yours.
but mine. And the power that I received, I was unstoppable after that because I knew that no one could change how I felt anymore because I would immediately be upset if someone said something or do something. I was so triggered all the time, which meant that I left my emotional state up to the hands of other people. That is not their job. What people say about you is none of your business. What you say about yourself and what God says about you in the Word is the most important thing. And that honestly was the thing that changed my life. And I didn't have those skills, all the knowledge, and the capacity to understand that. So therapy was a very good tool for me to learn and rewire that brain and that thinking of understanding I'm in charge of the emotions. And once I took back that power, it was very hard for outside things to disrupt my soul anymore because I knew it was in my control. That's the only thing you can control, is that, not the outside. That's going to happen around you all the time. So, yeah, that was a very pivotal moment for me.
I mean, that's powerful, right? Because it's about looking inward. And
Yes.
like you were saying, there's darkness there. There's things we don't want to know about ourselves. There's things
Yes.
we don't want to shout from the rooftops.
Yeah.
There's things that we've been through that we've buried, that we almost feel like, you know what, I'm going to compartmentalize this. I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
I'm focusing on ABC, but it
Yes.
keeps creeping
It
back.
does.
I mean, once you had this aha moment in terms of it boils down to me, how did that play out at home? Was that a hubby, let's have a cup of coffee and let's talk about what's happened? I mean, what was that practical translation into your home life to make that come to life?
I'm trying to think. I don't, you see, because we had a really tough 2023 in the sense of like emotional marriage, our home, finances. And my husband and I, we speak very openly about this because I mean, this is our testimony as well. So there's nothing to hide. But I think it was my knowing my worth because we were going through quite a lot of things all at once. I thought that my confidence was my worth in the sense of just being bubbly in my personality. I actually realized that I didn't set boundaries at all, that I didn't know how to set boundaries and stick to them. I actually would self sabotage myself a lot and I actually gaslit myself a lot. I realized that I was playing against myself a lot. Once I could
Sure.
decompartmentalize the emotional situation and take that power back, it was quite simple. Gavin, X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, I'm gone. And it's not about I want my way. It was also very Holy Spirit led because I knew it was going to help him too. And the moment I set that boundary, no matter what the outcome was going to be, I mean, we were speaking to lawyers. It was getting to the point that we were, okay, we're both amicably going to set this. And obviously, the children will always come first. We all always love each other. I know that without a shadow of a doubt. We didn't ever, it was just, we were growing very, very far apart. But it was, I knew my worth. I knew it eventually. I knew that I deserved to be loved. I knew that I deserved to have the best type of father for my children. And I deserved for me to be in a space where I can live in peace. And if you were not going to provide those things, even though I love you still, I am willing to walk away. I didn't necessarily say I was going to get divorced. Separation was still just on the cards. But I was at that point where I said, this is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I see for us. And if you can't be on board with that, we are not going to grow together. And a miracle happened after I had set that boundary. It was like my husband humbled himself. He was dealing with the things he was dealing with. And it's like God broke this barrier. And all of a sudden, I can't really tell you, it was a miracle actually. Something just changed because I stood up for myself. And it wasn't a fighting situation. It was I just had so
Yeah.
much peace because I honestly, for the first time in my life, went, I deserve to be treated like a princess. That's what God says in the Word of God, that my husband's made to love me like he loves the church. And I will not have anything less than that. I am the head, not the tail. And I just found it wasn't about ego, and it was all about peace, serenity, and knowing who I am. And when I set that boundary in, it was like it set everything into motion. He could see it. It's almost like he needed to be pushed without even knowing it. So obviously, for every marriage and every household, everything always looks so different. You know, it could have ended up us being separated, and I would have been set in my choice because it wasn't something that I said so that I could get a reaction. I would have said it many, many times before. In 12 years of marriage, I would have said, "Oh, if you don't do that, I'm going to leave." You know, it wasn't, but that was always like a threat. The difference for me was that I'd done the work. I had known who I am. I know what I have to offer. I know who I am. When you know that feeling, which I had never, for 33 years, I had never felt that feeling. I had confidence, but it was a real deep understanding of my worth and how love is in my heart and how much I have to give. And if that is not for you, I will give it to somebody else. And that for me was
Yeah.
the piece I needed to make the decision on saying, this is what I have to offer. Otherwise, I'm going. And it did. It changed things for us. It opened his eyes to realize that he could lose it all. And he wasn't willing to lose it all. So he had to introspect, look in himself. And we then started the process. So I know it sounds
Beautiful.
silly when people say, oh, it all starts with the man in the mirror, but it does. It really does start within oneself. Because we shift blame. I've done it my whole life. I've done it for so many years. Oh, it's Gavin. It's Gavin. I did for a long time. Oh, it's him. It's him. Oh, he's so miserable. Oh, it's this. It's this. Oh, he's never happy. He never smiles. He never. And I was like, so does that mean you can't smile? Why is it that we allow the outside change our inside? You know,
Inside. Yeah.
obviously environment is important. I'm not going to state that it's not. I mean, you having your environment and your space is important. You can't expect a plant to grow if you keep it locked up in a cupboard. It needs sunlight. So you do need to have a good environment where you can grow and flourish. So I do understand that someone's presence can bring you down, but ultimately it's also your responsibility to have enough respect for yourself to tell a person what your boundary is in the kindest, most mannered way possible, because boundaries is what keeps you connected. I promise you that for me is a life-changing game changer, without a shadow of a doubt.
So you've touched on something there, right? And I think people have this perception of boundaries of this hard line in the sand, yes or no, and it can be so ugly and it potentially causes conflict. So instead of having the conversation, people shy away from it because they just don't want to have the
Yeah.
argument. But there is something in terms of you can put a boundary in place through an absolute space of grace and kindness, saying, I love the hell out of you, right? I do, I adore you. But from you, I need A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring the X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
But somewhere there needs to be a boundary. And I think the lens that I've had in terms of my own ahas is that boundaries is not just to block people out.
Yes.
Boundaries can also be to bring people in,
Yes.
right? To create boundaries in your relationships with your family, with your friends, with your partners, with your children, that you understand what that looks like for you guys in your own little bubble to really nurture what you have. And you've nailed that in terms of what you've been through, in terms of the boundaries you put in place for yourself and ultimately for your partner, right? Like hubby was part of that thought process for you.
Yeah.
And the two of you then making decisions to grow together.
It's in chalk and cheese when I tell you where we were last year to where we are now. It is, and obviously through the 12 years that we've been together, we have had many ups and downs. We have already had moments of we're out, or more me. I mean, I don't think my husband has ever said to me, I'm out. Never. But one thing that I've absolutely loved about him and I love about him is that he's never given up on his marriage. Me being through traumaticness through my whole life, I was always a runner. Like, I'm out. That's the first thing I'd always say. So I can imagine after 10 years of hearing that, he must be like, God, this crazy woman.
Okay, go. Just do what you need to do.
Eventually it was like, and I understand that he might have caused me different types of pain, right? But I started realizing that I'm not innocent in this matter. It really does take two to tango. And I put so much emotional strain on him to provide me with happiness. I expected him to make me happy. I was so confused. I thought that that was the job of my husband. It wasn't. When I started reading in the Bible of what it is that your husband is supposed to do, he's supposed to love you. And love is shown in many different ways, but he's supposed to provide for you as well, that your safety, in many different ways. But I'm supposed to be in charge of my emotions. I'm supposed to be in charge of the way that I feel about things around me and inside of me. That's not his job. And the moment that I understood that and I woke up to that, I was like, oh my gosh, I have been living in this self-sabotage victim mentality for such a long time, thinking that it's everybody else's job to make me feel better. Whereas if I have that power, you can really be unstoppable. You really have, my therapist taught me so many things. He said, like, every time you have a weird thought, Bianca, don't judge yourself for it. Don't be like, yes, that's crazy. Rather turn around and say, that's interesting. So every time I have these weird thoughts, I'm always like, that's interesting, Bianca. How do we get to that thought process? Why do we feel about that person? Why is that coming up for you? So I become so much softer towards my own self. Like there's no harshness. I was always so, and I am still tough on myself in certain things. We've all got things to work on. But having your power back is so important because it really will elevate who you are as a person, and you'll soon quickly see who's there with you, including your spouse, including your children. And the boundaries, like you said, it's actually, I think it's a detriment to your own self if you don't have boundaries. People are so scared of conflict. I'm a debater by nature. I love to debate. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel that's because you know what? There's a story in the Bible of the angel, and I can't remember the man's name, where the angel and him wrestled all long hours into the night until the angel tapped him and gave him his blessing. And that's what I feel like happens is that you've got to wrestle with God. You know that Israel stands for to wrestle with God. So
I didn't know
we're
that.
not meant to just stand here and be like, hello, we're meant to get dirty. We're meant to wrestle with God. Oh, this is what I want. This is what, and you go for it. And that for me is like my character, true and true, is that I'm ready to wrestle. I'm ready to go in. But the difference was that I was blind wrestling. I didn't see, I was going in rest. Now I can wrestle, but with compassion. I wrestle with love and joy and determination and authority and power. I think I was wrestling with bitterness and anger and sadness and resentment. And those are two different wrestling matches I can for sure show you. So the boundary set in place is so important for us to be able to respect ourselves and ultimately respect the other person as well. And you teach people how to treat you if you allow people to do things over and over again. And I think that's what I did with my husband without knowing it, is that because we were so tired of being broken all the time, the whole of 2023, I never really stood up for myself with the way that things were going. So when I could take that power back, it's almost like I could say to him, oh no, I've allowed this to slide for too long, but I'm coming back. This is not who I am. And I tell you what, now when we have an argument or now if we have something, I will send a message immediately to him and I would say, I understand these are your concerns, X, Y, Z, but what I do not appreciate is the way that you said X, Y, and Z. You will never raise your voice or speak. Not that he raises his voice, he's not, but he will get, he talks loudly. You will never talk to me in that manner, and I will not raise my, I will not meet you there. Please respect my decision to walk away if it is not mutually getting us to where we want to get to.
Yes.
I love you. I need space. That is the way that you send a boundary. That's the way that you say to someone, I will not stand for the behavior. I apologize for the way that I responded to your behavior too. But talking to each other when you are emotional, you're never going to get anywhere. You really aren't. It's just going to be
No,
shifting
it
back.
goes
It goes
nowhere.
nowhere.
Yeah.
But just those skills is what we're learning better to do, and realizing that my therapist sent a picture. Um, it says you, me, and the problem. And it's like when the problem's in the middle, there's you and me, but where it's you, me, and the problem, sorry, you, me, and the problem, where it should be you and me, the problem. So you two face the
Doing it
problem
together.
instead of you, me, and then the problem in the middle. And that's where the issue lies. And then ever since I saw that picture, I thought to myself, like, that's how I'd like to do it with not just my husband, but business partners, friends, family members, my kids, is constantly understanding that what is the problem and how can we together solve it ultimately.
You know what I love about you, right? Is I think you're, I think you said 32, 33-year-old woman, right? And you're a mommy and you've lived different parts of life and you've opened up different chapters and you've closed some. But you speak And maybe it is that with that authority, right? Like I can hear the way you speak that you've done the hard yards, that you've held up the mirror, that you've taken
Yeah,
accountability. And it's about, I don't want this bullshit in my
yeah,
life anymore. I'm taking control. I'm taking my space and my
yeah,
ownership back. And the things that you're talking about in terms of how you and your husband now manage conflict in your relationship, absolutely, that's a
yeah.
skill.
It's a skill.
People get so
Yeah.
caught up in that heightened sense of emotion
Yes.
that that emotional
Yes.
regulation, that emotional maturity to say, I can't do
Yeah.
this right now, let's take a time out. People get so lost in that emotion. And it's what I love about how you've articulated it is that you can have the hard conversation. You can put what you need on the table and say, right, we'll talk about this a little bit later. Right now, this is going
100%.
nowhere. I need space. I think you need space too.
100%.
And it's about practicing and practically applying that skill in
You
your
know what,
relationship.
Chantal?
But you've done the hard yards, Bianca,
Yes,
to
but
get
that's the
there.
thing is that I started with me first. Start with you, guys. Start with yourself. Take your power back. Understand that because then once you can do that with yourself, because once you can face yourself, you can face anything. You are the scariest person to face in this world. I can guarantee you that. You have lived in this body forever. How long you've lived in it? It is not easy facing yourself. We have got things hidden in there that we have buried for a very long time. I can guarantee you
Yeah.
now, people are not scary. We're scary within ourselves. Facing ourselves is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And I have faced big demons and crazy ass people in my life. And I can tell you something now. Looking within was one of the hardest things that I had to do. Facing reality of what I have done to people, what people have done to me, and what I've done with that was very, very, very difficult for me. But I want to continue on that journey because I promise you now, I didn't even know that it was a skill to be able to talk to your partner like that. And it's so empowering. When I tell you that I've wanted to feel this way about myself and about my circumstances for so long that when I'm here, the thing that I pray about the most is saying, Lord, please keep me here. Please keep me so self conscious, not self conscious, self aware of me that it's so not about me. I know that sounds so weird, but like in that moment when it gets heated,
Yeah.
and I want to go there. I know because our human nature is to go there. I want to be heard. I want to be seen. It's my idea. I'm the one who came up with that concept. I. Whereas you can sometimes just sit back, analyze the situation. Okay, cool. Why am I feeling this way emotionally? Let's put a pause because you are allowed to pause things. I think as women as well, we're taught to be polite, very polite, and just say yes. We're like the yes girls and the good girls, and this mentality of always wanting to please others. And where
Yes.
sometimes you can just say, no, can I get back to you? And that's a full sentence. There doesn't need to be a justification. I find myself in that situation many times still to this day where I want to explain myself. And sometimes I'm
Yes, I
like,
do the
do
same.
you have
You don't have to.
do
Yeah.
you have the time? Because this time could be spent on working on developing a child. So you want to spend imagine all the hours I've spent just justifying myself on why I can't do something versus if I use that energy to put back into my business and the kids that I work with every day. And that's the mission and the thing that I'm learning at the moment currently is learning how to say no with kindness and not having to justify that. Because at the end of the day, you cannot control how you're perceived. You can't. You could be the nicest person in the world, Chantal, and someone will still make you a villain in their story. I'm not here to love. I'm
That's
not here
their
to
stuff.
love. I'm here to love people, but I'm not here to convince people to like me.
Yeah.
I'm very, very grateful, and I'm always perceived as a likable person. But I can tell you something now. I'm very much sure that I'm not a likable person in people's stories. But luckily for me, with the work that I've done, I've come to realize that it's not my problem. At the end of the day, I have to be my most truest self because I'm the only person living in this body till the day that I die. It's never going to change. So if I'm going to hate myself and down talk myself and downplay my capacity and my authority and the things and the gifts that I've been given in my heart and my soul and my spirit, it's going to be a very awful place to live in for a very long period of time. I don't want
Yeah.
to live like that. Nobody should have to live like that.
Someone
It's hard to.
articulated someone articulated that for me years ago, and I've clung onto it. It's not my stuff. You have your stuff, I have my stuff, but whatever this is in the middle, it's not my stuff. And that's helped me to navigate the journey that you're on, right? Is to separate almost the truth from reality, what's in my control, what's not in my control, and staying true to
Yes.
myself. and navigating those steps. So spot on. But
Yeah.
again, it takes that moment of insight, experience, knowledge where you've come from to get there.
Listen, it's not an easy fix. I took a year off in a sense. Obviously, you're never off when you run your own business and stuff, and you're a mom and a wife and all these things. But I took like almost a year to really dig deep. So, that's why 70 or 80% of the world never get to where they want to go because they give up too soon. There's a certain amount of grit that you have to cling on to,
Mm-hmm.
a certain type of hope, not just for your dreams and your aspirations and these big things, but for the healing space. Because there's times where you don't want to get
Yeah.
out of bed. There's times that I was so disappointed in myself for not feeling a certain way. I was like, why can I not just feel happy and excited that I just, I felt bad for feeling those things until I realized that the feelings were guiding me and showing me that there was something deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And once I navigated what feelings were, I realized eventually that I could choose to feel them or choose not to feel them. And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But I didn't even know that that was something I could do. I just thought if you felt that way, that's how you feel. And you're going to be in that for a period of time. Whereas I gained that knowledge and that power by going, okay, especially the feelings wheel. I don't know if the
Yes.
feelings wheel. I would always go, how am I feeling today on the spectrum? And I'm like, okay, I'm feeling sad. Okay, why am I feeling sad? What happened today? What happened last night? What was the build up? And then as soon as I could get to that like point, I would give myself that
It's like a
grace and I'd be like,
release
it's
as well.
okay. It's okay to feel sad. Do we want to cry today? Do we want to play some music? Would that help you? And like I would talk to myself like a friend. And I think having that has really helped me also love people better because I have that compassion and empathy towards people now because I can see the struggle that people face on
Mm-hmm.
an everyday basis. And if I am going to be a light to this world, people are going to be drawn to that light. So when they come, I need to then welcome and love and nurture and guide because there's so many people who've been a light to me that I saw and it was like, oh, I'm so drawn
Thank
to this
you.
person.
Yeah.
How can they help me? Now you've gifted me. I want to now impart that gift onto someone else. And so the world goes, like doing this and sharing our knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
information in any way possible. But it does, it starts with self. It really does. We've got to start shifting blame to others. Yes, people can play a part. I have no doubt that people can really play a part. But when you have your power, no one can take that away from you. It's like I think that's where confidence comes from. It's like you've got to cut above the rest, and
Mm-hmm.
that when you walk into a room with that kind of a surety within oneself, it really really shines for others to experience and know. And I like that about myself, and I want to continue to nurture that about myself because
Absolutely.
I've worked very hard to get to that point for myself. Yeah.
You are, for me, such an inspiration. And I mean, I've
Oh.
I've been following you. No, but for reals, I've been following you obviously on Instagram. My mom told me, Chantal, you need to reach out to this woman, and I was like, yes, mom. Quickly got on. You have to get on the podcast. No problem, mom. I'm gonna try. But I almost
Oh.
feel like you've missed a calling in life in terms of being a motivational speaker. You just
Oh, thank
the
you.
knowledge, the nuggets of wisdom, the practicality you've brought into this conversation, I know is going to help so many women.
I hope
You're
so.
in this divine space, my friend, and I just pray blessings. Honestly, I pray blessings and
Oh,
abundance into your
I
life.
receive. Thank you,
Bianca,
Chantal.
thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know how hectic your schedule is, right? For
Yes,
just
thank
being
you.
on the podcast, for sharing parts of your story with us, leaning into that vulnerability. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
tenfold. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for reaching out, taking that risk and that opportunity. And I pray blessings over your channel and your podcast as
Thank
well, so
you.
that more people can come. I can't wait to share it. I hope it's received well. I'm sure it will be blessings upon blessings. And thank you for having me and allowing me to
Oh,
speak my truth. I appreciate that so much. I really, really do. Thank you.
you
Thank you,
really are
Chantal.
the definition for you as well. Thank you. Have a beautiful
Thank
day.
you.
Keep doing what you're doing. You
You
are a
too.
light.
Oh, you too, Chantal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.